Greetings everyone, this is Danny from HarrTravel.com, your Norwegian cruise experts, and today I'm coming with some great news. Norwegian is getting ready to return to service. We're not quite there yet, but by implementing their new Sail Safe standards, what they've done is essentially taken everything that they've seen from the CDC so far, working with them collaboratively, and they've instituted 6 updates or changes to what they're going to do on board to help ensure the safety of their passengers. What is important to note is that they have not officially announced a rollout plan of which ships will be coming back and when, and in addition to it, the CDC standards are not 100% finalized yet. So essentially what these are new immediate changes that are going to be made no matter what, and they believe that they will far exceed those that are required by the CDC. So the very first thing that they're going to do is replace all of the filters on all of the Norwegian Holdings ships. So that's going to include Regent, Norwegian, and Oceania cruises. They're replacing them with medical grade filtration, which essentially will take out everything out of the air, or 99.95% of everything out of the air, that is above 0.1 microns. And per their research and working with the CDC, COVID is actually 0.125 microns, which is actually larger than that. So this is going to be a huge help right off the bat, and it's something that I think is a great way to start. Next up will basically just be an enhancement of their screening protocols that they already started at the very beginning of all of this. So when we were filming on the Norwegian Getaway in New Orleans, we had to do quite a few of these things, which would be the temperature checks, the enhanced screening, basically the medical questionnaire ahead of time, and then one when you get there as well. And then what I also noticed that they've added is they're going to be doing these temperature checks throughout the cruise. What's been very interesting is seeing this new technology emerge that basically is very similar to stepping up to an iPad or a camera, and it looks at you and it basically checks your temperature and then goes on quickly. So what's great is that seeing those kind of technologies advance, they're going to be able to screen people very, very quickly. Because in addition to when you embark, they're also going to do a quick temperature check and screening in that sense before you go to any meal, before you go to any event in public spaces and things like that as well. So we know that it's more than just passengers on a ship. In fact, the most important part of the ship is the crew. And crew safety is vital to every single cruise line for lots of reasons. In addition to just being the right thing to do, this is how the ships can run. So one of the things that they're going to be doing with crew members is the same enhanced screening techniques. They're also going to screen them before they leave their home country. They're going to screen them when they arrive. And then just like with all passengers, if anybody is considered at risk or additional risk, there's going to be a secondary screening level. So one very important thing to note is in all of this, we haven't seen anything talking about the fact that people will be denied boarding if they are at risk. So I take that in the way that they explained it as a very positive thing, because it looks like what we've been thinking, that essentially, just like Disney put it on their website, essentially, if you go into a public space, there is COVID out there right now, and you are taking a risk doing any kind of travel, any kind of going to the restaurant, grocery store, any of those things right now. That said, with all of these implementations in place, it looks to be one of the safest public spaces that you can go to in the entire world right now. Next up is talking about the increased sanitation measures. These are ones that we've been talking about since all of this started, and one thing that I think is a huge advantage for them is that they have experience with this. So my last Norwegian cruise, actually I was supposed to go on the Norwegian Joy in the Haven in March, which was canceled unfortunately, but my last one that I did go on was on the Norwegian Joy for Thanksgiving of this past year. And the week before that, they did have some issues with norovirus. And what I would say is I have never felt safer or cleaner on a ship than when I went on the cruise that we went on, because they used a lot of these techniques. Now these techniques are going to be expanded greatly. So one of the things that they're going to be using is, I believe it's hypochlorous acid, and essentially they're using an electric static charge to oxidize. So this is fogging. You guys have probably seen this already on airplanes in different areas, but essentially what it does is it oxidizes, and it basically stops viruses and spores and bacteria and things like that from being able to absorb the oxygen. But this is something that's safe to do in public areas, and this is something that they will be doing throughout the cruise. In addition to that, you're also going to have full service buffets. Now, this is a little bit of a tweak from what we saw from Royal Caribbean. It may have just been an off-the-cuff comment by Michael Bailey, the Royal Caribbean CEO, but basically what they're saying is they're going to have the buffets. It looks to be very similar to what it is right now, with the exception of everything will be served by employees. Now, once again, on my Thanksgiving cruise, this was happening anyways, and when I cruised on Oceania the last time, the way that they always do it is they take plastic wrap and put it all the way around the buffet so that nothing can get in, and then you point out and tell what you would like to get. and they will bring it to you or they'll serve you. Now, what will be interesting is to see if they kind of combine this with another enhancement of being able to cook more things a la minute, because there's going to be a lot less passengers on the ship initially. It may be that they can do a lot more with this. In addition to that, there's going to be increased personal hygiene, where they're going to ask you to wash your hands frequently. You should be doing this anyways throughout life, especially right now. But also they're going to have hand sanitizer throughout the ship and things along those lines. In addition, they're going to be bringing more crew on board just for cleaning purposes. So essentially, if you've been on a cruise, what you have seen is that they're constantly being cleaned anyways. What we're going to see is that's going to be stepped up one more level. So all of these things combine to a very high increase in sanitation that we believe will far exceed the CDC requirements. So the next point is one that people have been asking a ton of questions about, and that is social distancing. Because as we know, a cruise in general is a gathering. It's a gathering of people together, just like a hotel is, just like a restaurant is, just like a sports event is. So what's going to happen is, at the very beginning, what we understand and know for sure is that they're going to greatly reduce the capacity. We have not heard an official number. I've heard anywhere from 40 to 55% initially. Once again, we don't know where that will land, and that will, at the end of the day, be up to the CDC. But what Norwegian's going to do is they are going to stagger embarkation. They're going to greatly enhance their ability to check in online, very similar to the way that Royal Caribbean already does, where you basically have a photo, you're going to upload the photo yourself, you're going to fill out the questionnaires, and that's going to expedite the process greatly when you get there. Now, once you get on board the ship, what we don't know is what that is going to look like exactly. But what Norwegian has put out there is that all events that normally would happen on a cruise should happen. Some may be slightly modified, but they will be greatly reduced in capacity. Now, this is going to tie in with the capacity decrease of the passengers on board, because from what we know, there's going to be the same amount of crew, or possibly even slightly more crew, for half the passengers. So first off, this is going to greatly increase the passenger experience to start, at least for these very few cruises, before you start seeing the capacity start to increase. But what are some of the things that these could look like? We could definitely see one-way walking tracks. The 6, 7, 8 complex, for example, on one of the Breakaway or Breakaway Plus classes, they could have walking, on your right one way, your left the other way. Same thing with the outside track area. They may just keep everybody in the same direction. And when we're looking at the interior venues, you can look to have probably more shows for less people. With my legroom issues, I think that's a great thing, because I'll actually be able to spread out for once. And same thing with the restaurants. I just went and had dinner at our local restaurant here in town, the Tartan. It's amazing. I've been going there since, for forever and ever. We actually had our wedding rehearsal there. But when I got there, it was a little bit of a shock initially, because half the bar stools were gone, half the tables were gone, and it was a little bit more spread out. But once again, by having half the capacity, and especially with Norwegian, with all of the restaurant options that they have, I think they have a really big advantage in some of these areas. But what we know for sure is social distancing has to be part of the return to cruise, at least for now. All right, so next up would be enhanced medical resources. If you've been on a cruise ship, you probably know that every cruise ship has a medical center. In fact, some of these big cruise ships, like the Norwegian Breakaway Plus class, this is basically the equivalent of a small hospital. It's not going to have all of the same things on there, of course. You're not going to have the full operating capabilities and things like that. But what they're doing is they're greatly enhancing what this is. So what we know, or what we've heard at least from other cruise lines and what we'd expect from Norwegian, is there are going to be a considerable amount of cabins that are offline initially, maybe creating a miniature medical center, essentially, just in case that there was an emergency or an issue that they were encountered. But what they're definitely going to do is they're going to have a medical resource officer. So basically, they're going to have a chief medical officer on board every one of their ships. This is a brand new advancement. This is in addition to the doctors, the nurses that are normally on board. They are also going to greatly increase the supplies that they have on board. So these are going to include, and I'm going to read it from here, the medical oxygen equipment, vaccinations, medications, and things like that to treat COVID specifically. But also in general, they're just increasing all of their capabilities when it comes to the medical side. Now, what we know early on is that most likely cruises are going to leave from Florida and Texas from the US and then come back. And so what we're going to see is, as we slowly roll out, some of these things may be enhanced. And in addition to it, some countries, in addition to just the CDC requiring, some countries may have more stringent requirements as well. But once again, looking at what Norwegian's doing, it looks to far exceed the minimum requirements that the CDC will set once again. All right, so the first 5 things that we mentioned just now are essentially in Norwegian's full control. Well, nothing's in any company's full control, but they have the ability to monitor and update and change and tweak because it's their equipment, it's their officers, and it's all of the things on board the ship. The final thing that we're going to talk about is the shoreside component, because that's a question that a lot of people have. Which countries are going to open back up? We've already seen that Grand Cayman has delayed, but the Bahamas looks like they're going to open up July 1st. So we don't really know exactly what that's going to look like, but what Norwegian has said is with every port of call that they're scheduled to go to, they're essentially going to work with them on increased sanitation standards. They're going to make sure that they understand the numbers, everything that's happening in that locale, and make a decision. So it may be that there are some itinerary changes, and they even put that on their website, that if the local destinations can't meet their standards, then essentially changes have to be made. You may want to check out our video on private islands and cruising with that, because one adjustment that Norwegian can make right away is utilizing their 2 private islands. Now, they do belong to countries. Great Stirrup Cay is part of the Bahamas, and Harvest Key is part of Belize, but we believe that they'll be able to work with their governments because essentially they control everything that happens in those spaces. So once again, as you move everything under their control, they feel that it's going to be a lot easier to maintain, to monitor, and to implement all of these health and safety initiatives. But we do know for sure that all of these cruise lines are going to return to the sea, and they're going to return to ports all around the world. So this is going to be a slow process as they vet each individual port and work it out together. So that's why I truly believe that they're going to start in the Caribbean with a very small sample size and slowly expand from there. Finally, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Norwegian's Peace of Mind program. The safety is part of it. The other part of it is the ability to book any cruise that departs before December 1st, and you can cancel up to 48 hours prior to your first service. So if that is a hotel or a flight, make sure that you pay attention to that, and it's 48 hours prior to that. But you can cancel it and get a 100% future cruise credit moved forward to another cruise. So their idea is that this will give you the peace of mind to book, and whether they're ready to cruise or you're not ready to cruise, you can decide to make up your own mind and basically make that decision. Now, what I really hope is that they'll go ahead and extend that a little bit longer. Royal Caribbean has actually extended that to any cruise that you book prior to August 1st, so that includes 2021 and 2022, and what we're seeing is an even greater amount of bookings from our Royal customers, and we believe a lot of it has to do with the fact that they can book further out without having to worry about it. Well, what that means is that Norwegian ships are still going to go out at the capacity that they're set, but it just means that they're probably going to book a little bit further out than their competition until they update that policy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am getting so incredibly excited when I see these kind of announcements, because what it means to me is that we're inching our way closer to a return to cruising. And keep in mind, it is up to you, and you always have to make the final decision about your health, your decision on whether to cruise or not to cruise, put it off or move it forward. But for me personally, what I believe is that traveling on a Norwegian cruise ship coming up in the next few months will be my safest mode of transportation and travel. That's my decision, talking to my doctor, the people that I know, and I encourage you to do the same. But once again, we are so incredibly excited that we are going to be able to cruise much sooner, but the resiliency of the cruise industry has really blown my mind throughout all of this. So when you're ready to book your Haven suite, reach out to Harr Travel. We are your Haven experts. You can check out the videos. We have all of the videos for all the suites that you can see exactly what you're getting, and we can explain every part of the process and help you book the perfect suite for you and your family and create the vacation of a lifetime at an incredible value.